Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, we sit down with Emily Kawano, an economics expert who will be taking part in next week's Decolonizing Economics Summit to talk about what all that precisely means and how it might be done. Also, reporter Ryan Hutson updates us on our ongoing investigation into area homelessness, including a recent death that highlights the risks of living on the street. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Living as we are on the ragged edge of this present moment, we can see stretched out behind us all the choices, mistakes, and victories that we've achieved as a species over the past 70,000 years. It's a humbling view of our collective evolution, but we too often take it for granted that all the good ideas are in play and that shifting the way we live and order our societies is impossible, because if it could have been done, it would have been. We end up, therefore, as prisoners of the present moment and the fears that arise from contemplating change in the face of a sleepy status quo. We end up as servants to systems that are not only imperfect, but protected by vested interests and inertia as sacred. Do we actually believe our best ideas are behind us? Are we ready to accept mounting inequality and economic stratification as an unfortunate but immutable fact of life? Coming up next week, the Decolonizing Economics Virtual Summit will be held as part of the 4th Annual Post-Capitalism Conference. Organizers and supporters are putting forth a bevy of ideas that could, if adopted, change everything. To flesh out what will be happening and get a sense of what's on tap, we're pleased to have with us economist Emily Kawano, who will be taking part and has developed quite the track record for thinking outside the box. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
So, real quick, let's get into your bio a little bit. How did you get involved in this, kind of reform-minded activity?
Well, I am an economist by training, but I've been working outside the academy for most of my professional life. I got involved when I was in graduate school in the Center for Popular Economics, which is a collective of progressive economists working to help people, non-economists, better understand how the economy works or how the economy doesn't work, as the case may be, and help them to imagine what the alternative might look like. And that effort to help people grapple with and imagine what the alternative is to capitalism led us to solidarity economy. And from there, I got involved in doing worker cooperative development work to really get my hands dirty in at least one of the practices that the solidarity economy would embrace. So yeah, that was my journey into this space. So my day job is I am the co-director of Wellspring Cooperative in Springfield, Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts. And we are developing a whole network of worker-owned businesses, as well as solidarity economy initiatives in these hardscrabble communities. So these are cooperative community initiatives, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term solidarity economy. But the other hat that I wear, aside from being co-director of this nonprofit, is just doing a lot of work in the solidarity economy space. I'm one of the co-founders of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. I was on the board of the International Solidarity Economy Network called REPES. So I've been in this space since really heavily, seriously, since maybe 2007 is when the U.S. Solidarity Economy was founded.
So now, one of the terms in the press release for the event coming up is post-capitalism, and a lot of people, their hackles rise when they hear that, and we fall back into the sort of the old, dichotomy of capitalism versus communism versus socialism. What do you guys mean when you say post-capitalism? What are you seeking to do with, the systems, I guess?
Well, first of all, I guess I would point out that me personally, I am very deliberate not to say anti-capitalist. Mm-hmm. And post-capitalist to me has a slightly different meaning in that what can we move beyond capitalism? Can we do better? I really believe that we can. We can create, we can build an economy and more broadly speaking, a world that serves people and planet instead of private profit and blind growth. I think we can do better. In fact, solidarity economy very much is clear that we believe anybody working in a solidarity economy space would reject that we're going to get to that more just, democratic, equitable, sustainable world by reforming capitalism. So that's what we mean by post-capitalism, right? Beyond capitalism. We would, however, there are many non-capitalist paradigms that you could talk about. One thing solidarity economy would absolutely reject are post-capitalist models that are authoritarian. So we do center democratic processes, and participatory democracy is one of our core values. So any kind of top-down authoritarian models, maybe as many people would think of the former Soviet Union, that is not a model that we would embrace as being part of the solidarity economy.
Well, I think it's important that you mention that, because I think a lot of people have ideas or prejudices from conversations and debates that have happened over the years. One of the things that has been highlighted is that the event is going to feature the Wiyot Tribe's Dishkama housing program, and it talks overall about centering Native experience and ethics as part of this overall effort. Can you give us a brief summary as to why you think it's important that we look back to the lifestyle and ethics of Native groups and what we can get from that?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak from a solidarity economy perspective, right? So solidarity economy didn't start as a theory. It looked around the world to see what sort of practices are going on that align with values. And so the values that it'll look slightly different in different parts of the world. In the US Solidarity Economy Network, we talk about practices that align with solidarity, participatory democracy, equity in all dimensions, sustainability, and our fifth value is pluralism, by which we mean this is not a one-size-fits-all model. There are many paths to this more just and sustainable and democratic and equitable world, right? And so we are not so arrogant to believe that we have a blueprint. And so where do indigenous approaches and worldviews fit into that? So I would say absolutely in the global South, definitely in Latin America, this worldview is very much infused into the solidarity economy. In the United States, I think we're a little slower. Like there is certainly an openness, but really those close connections are a little bit slower to happen. But solidarity economy is really open, not only open, but we know that we have to change our basic relationships with each other and our relationships with Mother Earth, right? We cannot take this kind of extractive perspective towards Mother Earth. And so in that respect, absolutely, we know that indigenous cultures have a lot of experience and many things to learn from, and to restore some of those values and those relationships is really worth centering. We don't need to create them anew. And many of our cultures, if you go back far enough, many of our cultures had a more sustainable relationship with nature, and we need to get back to that.
One of the things that you've talked about so far is the co-op cooperatives, and I mean that's sort of like the model under which a lot of these programs seem to be based. Is that, for people who aren't familiar, how would you define a cooperative? Is it like the cooperative grocery store that people have down the street, or is this a new kind of entity? How would you describe that?
It is not new. Co-ops are quite old. And even before they were like formalized entities, the way that human beings have survived is through various kinds of cooperative activities. But nowadays, when we talk about cooperatives, we're talking about these formal entities. So a cooperative is an entity that is formed by its members to serve their needs and support their interests. Okay, so there are three main kinds of types of co-ops. In every case, they serve the needs and interests of their members. So a worker co-op, their members are the workers. The workers own and control the cooperative business, and they benefit as the business grows. If it's profitable, they profit share, but they also have that democratic control on some level of the business. A consumer co-op is owned and controlled by its members who are the consumers. So you mentioned a food co-op. If you belong to a food co-op, you buy into the membership, and then you have some voice, and you might share in the profits in terms of a dividend, or you might see it in the form of lower prices. The third kind is a producer co-op. So it's where a bunch of producers come together and they do something collectively. So for example, some well-known producer co-ops are Ocean Spray or Land O'Lakes, where there are farmers and they come together and they're jointly processing food and marketing it. So those are the three main types of cooperatives. And then the fourth type is just a hybrid. So it might be a food co-op that is owned both by consumers and by workers. So that would be a hybrid. So that's basically what a cooperative is.
Okay. No, and I wanted to dive into the term decolonize a little bit. I mean, that's, I don't want to say it's a loaded term, but it's a term that has a lot going on within it, especially in our culture, where, I mean, our, the efforts at colonization have led to basically the genocide of Native American populations. And how do we begin to decolonize, or I guess what does that even mean when our collective identity a lot of the time is tied up in sort of the abuser cycles that people get caught up in because of that colonization? Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, it does. Yeah, so first of all, what do we mean? I I think that it might be defined in different ways. So I'm going to say this is how I think about decolonization, right? If you look at the history of colonization, it's kind of a mind frame that one group has the right to go in and colonize, take over, maybe commit genocide in some cases, or enslave, or in some way exploit folks that are already there, right? And there was a need to rationalize that process. And so from the get-go, the colonial process was was part and parcel of building a racist ideology or a concept of racism, that this race is superior, this race is savage or less than, and are deserving of being colonized, or maybe even out of benevolence, right? The colonizers are bearing that white man's burden, right, of bringing civilization to the savage natives. So um, a colonial mentality has this power dynamic, it has this hierarchy, it has this superiority, inferiority, it has this racist kind of justification from the get-go. So part of decolonization is about addressing that legacy of racism, questioning it, understanding where it came from and how it served the process of colonialism and then imperialism, and how it's still very much with us today. So that's part of it. But beyond that, I think to me, decolonization means a whole different way of thinking, right? That's not grounded in Western linear rationality. It's a more holistic way of thinking. It is not just instrumental. It's not taking the view that everything is there for our taking. Everything is there to serve our wants and our needs and our profit making, right? An understanding of how we as human beings need to live in harmony with other human beings, but also with Mother Earth and all the creatures on the earth. So to me, it's a whole worldview kind of change, decolonizing our sense of who we are, how we should be with each other, how we should be with Mother Earth. It even comes down to the way that we think and how we value facts and data and outcomes and measures, right? It's a pretty wholesale rethinking of our whole worldview and culture.
I think that's beautifully described. Thank you for that. I think that helps clarify things. One of the things that the ideas that are put forth in this conference, which is coming up over the next weekend, is that basically there's a lot of really, really good and ambitious ideas for how to make things change. The problem, as I see it, is that over time it seems like we've gotten entrenched in this idea that only so many changes can be wrought in our society because of the history that we have, or the government, the Constitution, the thing that we have used to base our society. For people who are, feel like they can't make change because of those restrictions, how do you reach them?
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes left, by the way.
Okay, I actually think we're in a moment where there's there are these convergent crises, from climate change to all the racial justice uprisings, to any number of things, crises that are converging. It creates this very special historic moment, which is ripe with a possibility of change. There are a lot of people that realize that the system is not working, right? There's a threat of fascism, right? It's scary times. People know that in their bones. A lot of people know that in their bones. And there's a exceptional openness to looking beyond the status quo. And I think there's this immense opportunity to change the narrative. And that's what I experience when I talk to people and I do this kind of work. And I do a lot of educational work and popular education around solidarity economy.
Well, you're good at it.
Really is, yeah. Yeah. So it's a moment. It's a very special moment that we need to seize.
Well, hopefully, this conference will give you an opportunity to take advantage of that moment. If we can go to the graphic real quick, it will lay out the details of what we're talking about. Decolonizing Economics Virtual Summit, 4th Annual Post-Capitalism Conference. It's the entry fee is a sliding scale, so you can pay what you can pay. It goes from the 420 to 423, April 23rd, and there's going to be an Earth Day celebration at Pearson Park in McKinleyville on April 22nd. Thanks for joining us, Emily. I wish we had more time and we could get deeper into it, but...
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. We'll be right back after the short break.
Okay, bye.
Hi, I'm Tracy Barnes-Priestley, and I want you to join me on Season 3 of What's on Your Bucket List. Are you excited to learn a new skill or curious to explore something you've only dreamed about? This show is for you. If you are at least 60 years old, please join me for an experience you won't forget right here in Humboldt County. To apply, go to keat.org or call 707-497-5052. Now, what's on your bucket list?
Friends and supporters of Keat TV, we are calling all who have a passion for public television on the North Coast. Keat is looking for a diverse group of people to join its Community Advisory Board, or CAB. CAB members play an advising role to management and act as Keat's ambassadors within the community. Meetings are held quarterly on Zoom. Go to keat.org, find the link for CAB, and get involved today. We look forward to meeting you.
For the past several months, reporter Ryan Hutson has been covering homelessness in Humboldt County through the testimony and experiences of real people who live on the streets and fight the odds for their survival. This week, she filed a story for Headline Humboldt that examines the unfortunate but concrete reality that death runs these same streets.
This past winter has seen a threefold increase in homeless deaths countywide, with a total of 10 this year in the first 2 months, compared to last year's 3 homeless deaths in the same time period. In response, the city of Eureka has tried its first overnight extreme weather warming center, hoping to prevent additional weather-related deaths among Eureka's unsheltered population. I sat down with Commander LaFrance from the Eureka Police Department's Community Safety Engagement Team and Jacob Rosen, the mastermind behind the city's new Crisis Alternative Response of Eureka, In mid-March, the city of Eureka decided to open the warming center for extreme weather nights on an as-needed basis, prompted by alerts received from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, according to Commander LaFrance. Eureka's temporary extreme weather overnight warming center opened its doors 6 nights in the 2 weeks of the latter part of March and sheltered a total of 48 people among them. Rosen and LaFrance explained that the outreach efforts are served with a healthy dose of humanity, but are always facing challenges.
Because the city is really taking the stance that like this isn't having these types of deaths is not acceptable, and we want to change that. And we're really fortunate and happy to be partnering with Lifehouse, the church that we've been that has been hosting this.
Right.
Free Meal has kicked in and helped, both being a drop off and a pickup location. It's really a nice example of the community coming together with different nonprofits and government agencies and really kind of coming together and helping make this not happen again, because it's tragic, and it I think if we come together as a community, we can find solutions so that it doesn't happen again.
It takes a village.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it just comes down to having that human connection with the person, right? I mean, coming up to them and just talking with them. A lot of the folks I was asking, hey, do you have somewhere warm to go tonight? And just starting that conversation. Because once you have that conversation, either A, it's going to lead to them wanting the service, or B, it's going to lead to them telling you what else they need.
As a follow-up to the tense trash and trauma reporting from January, I began to review autopsy reports from the Eureka area, hoping to determine if the weather was a factor in these transient deaths, and if so, to what degree. In reviewing some of these autopsy reports collected from the coroner's office, a 33-year-old man was found deceased outside a church on a night with heavy rain and lower temperatures than usual. Raymond Chagola died as he laid under a set of stairs at the rear of the church, out of sight but not out of the elements. Cause of death was determined to be a heart attack complicated by hypothermia. It was also noted that mental illness may have been a factor in the circumstance of his death. In addition to asking about the new warming center and how that was offered to unsheltered community members, I wanted to know what Eureka's CSET and care coordinators thought about the availability of alternative shelter spaces in regard to this particularly tragic and preventable death. How important is it for the community to have alternative spaces for unhoused people to find shelter in, whether it's an extreme overnight weather warming center or if it's with Betty Chin or the rescue mission, because some of those are not accessible for some people.
There are some mental health issues going on as well, and so that's the challenge we have. Is that as you said, you said that you read the toxicology was clean, so nothing at all.
Right.
And so we have to, anytime we look at these issues, we have to, how did this happen? And so what in the system didn't work? Right. So was it a housing issue? Was it a mental health issue? Was the person being provided appropriate services? Were they asking for services? If they were they being provided services that were appropriate? Were they being dismissed from services? If they're looking for housing, whatever it is, what caused this individual to be outside? And who likely didn't have the cognition to recognize, hey, this is the weather conditions, and now you have a 33-year-old dying of hypothermia, possibly caused by a heart attack. That's greatly troubling to me. That we have these folks on the street that he couldn't advocate for himself, and likely I don't know the individual, but yet here we are with an individual who has value, and someone's child, and someone cares about, and that's just the challenge we have. But from when I look at it, where in the system can we make it better to improve it to stop this from happening? But we'd have to probably dig in deeper and see exactly what led where. Was he looking for services or not? What happened when we looked at the services? It's not right.
Overall, the somewhat experimental temporary overnight shelter functioned as a pilot program for the city, according to LaFrance and Rosen, in hopes that when needed in an emergency like an extreme weather event or a natural disaster, that the program would run smoothly. In the context of the increased transient deaths this past winter, being able to shelter an additional 48 people out of the possibly hundreds of homeless on the streets of Eureka on any given night, this was a success for community members who would have otherwise been left to the elements. This is Ryan Hutson with a tense trash and trauma update for Headline Humboldt.
Thanks, Ryan. That was a great report. As part of a partnership grant with WETA's new series, Iconic America, we here at KEAT asked locals what makes the majestic redwoods so iconic and so meaningful.
Once I hit like Garberville and start getting into Richardson Grove and all that, just the stress and all that stuff of the city goes away from me. Redwood trees are serene, can be in touch with nature, and it's just beauty, man. It's a beautiful place. Come visit.
Some people hypothesize that the bluffs in Arizona are tree trunks. And I think that if we take a closer look at the earth at a little bit more of a distance, I think there's evidence of that. People were bigger, animals were bigger, trees were bigger. I think what we're looking at right now is a bunch of babies.
The redwoods mean home to me. A lot of outdoor activities, grew up with them, pretty peaceful.
You know, we just don't want to take those giant first growth, ancient growth redwoods down so the road gets widened. It also is this beautiful rainforest. It's the North Coast rainforest.
They're so grand and they're so old that it just makes me feel like humans are so insignificant and there's so much greater things other than just us.
Yeah, I always think nature, huge, massive, and just historically, because those trees are thousands of years old.
They're gorgeous, they're big, they're tall, and they're my home.
The redwood trees are wholesome and they're really the heart of our community and our home.
When you pass through the redwood curtain, it's like going to a whole other planet. But they are the oldest, the most primordial. They're magic. The redwoods mean magic to me.
You can watch Iconic America, Our Symbols and Stories, right here on KEAT TV, Wednesday, April 26th at 10 p.m. That seems like a must-watch. I mean, we've all grown up with redwood trees, and it's one of those things where you get kind of like, blindness to the things that are always around you. It's like my kids, if they don't clean their room pretty soon, they think that the smell is just natural and always smells good. But when I walk in there, it stinks. That's how the redwoods, they don't stink, but they're cool. Redwoods stuff. So, yeah, stay tuned, stay informed.